Welcome to Surviving with She Rich, the talk show where we help those silenced by trauma regain their voices. I'm your host, Dr. Sherry Richardson. Join my guests and me as we share inspiring stories of resilience and practical steps toward healing within a supportive community. Thank you for tuning in, and let's get started on this empowering journey from trauma to triumph, surviving to thriving, one story at a time. Welcome to Surviving with She Rich, the virtual talk show where we help those silenced by trauma regain their voices. I'm your host, Dr. Sherry Richardson, and I'm so excited today with the guest that I have. I don't know if y'all can see my t-shirt. It says Sisters. And the guest I have on here today is one of my biological sisters, y'all. One of my biological sisters. And so I want you guys to help me welcome Kelli Matthews. Hey, Kel.
Hey.
I'm so glad to have you on here today. I'm excited. One, that I have you in this virtual space, but I'm also excited because you get to share your story. Part of your story is my story too. So I just want to say, hey, how you doing?
Hey, just happy to be here and, standing up. Or sitting down.
Exactly. Or sitting down, like in this space. And you guys are probably like, what does she mean by that? We're going to get to what she means by that in a moment as she tells her story. But oftentimes I'll start off and I'll say, okay, who this person is to me, what they mean to me, how long I've known them. And so you guys are probably like, she's your sister. You've probably known her your whole life. But that wasn't our story, Kelli. Kelli is my younger sister. I actually had one younger sister, not realizing that now I have two. Kelli and I found ourselves a couple of years ago we know it's divine now, but we didn't even know that we existed. We grew up not even realizing that we had other siblings.
Right.
And so when we finally got to that place, it was like, whoa. So I'm going to let you unpack that a little bit, like how we actually got to the point where we met, because we did not grow up knowing one another.
So the thing that is so funny every time I tell this story is me and my oldest daughter decided to do Ancestry.com. We decided to do it. Actually, we said, oh, let's do different services. So she did one of the other ones, and I did Ancestry because we wanted to compare the results, for fun. And my mom would crack jokes and like, oh, why y'all looking at that? I already know where he stole me from. I spent my whole life saying, I don't look like anyone. But anyway, so we get these results, and it takes a second for everything to form. You know what I mean? And you are the first person that popped up. In my ancestry, you were the person that was closest related to me out of everyone. And then a younger brother we mutually have, right? And so he was next. But you two were the people I was most closely related to. From a whole line of people, I said, who are these people?
Right? Who are these Hickmans, right?
But in the back of my mind, we'll eventually get to that too. But I kept saying, but this name sounds familiar. This name sounds familiar. I know someone, but still in my mind, it just, it didn't register. And a long story short, I get the background on everything that had occurred. And it was like two sides. The first side was, this is so exciting. Oh my God.
Right.
People that look like me. And I'll get to the cyber stalking later, but that's a different story.
No, not cyber. Wait a minute.
But on the other hand, I felt like my entire identity had been stolen from me.
Right.
Because you spend your whole life at this point. I mean, I'm 50 now, but at the time I was like in my mid 40s,
Right.
you know, and you spend your whole life believing this is my story, right? This is where I come from. This is what my people did, and then you find out that is not your story.
It's not the full story.
Right, right.
It's because that, who you're raised with is a part of your story. How you're
Yeah,
brought up is a part of, but that wasn't your full story. That
right.
wasn't our full story. Right.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So I reached out to you, and I reached out to a cousin, and you know, and you know, Damon was the first one to actually like respond. Um,
Right.
and I think he was like so to me, he was like so calm about it. He was just like, I can't even
That's
express.
our brother though. That's
Right.
that's how he is. He is
Yeah,
always so calm. I don't
yeah.
know if I've ever seen him upset, hyped up. He is just, that's him. He's very calm.
It's just like, oh, okay, and I feel like, so in that moment, when I first started talking to him, um, this is when I first realized that genetics are very strong.
Oh my. Yes. Oh, you look like our family.
Uh, you
Oh,
know,
most definitely.
yeah, genetics are
Hmm.
very strong, not even just in looks, but in personality and characteristics, right? The
Yes.
thing, yeah. So back to cyber stalking. So at the time,
Look, let me clutch my pearls.
but right now, so I said, "Who is this woman?" That would be you. Who is
Right.
this
Wait,
woman?
hold that thought.
Yeah.
Who is this woman? Because y'all have to understand something. When Kelli reached out to me, I was in the middle of my doctorate. So I stopped looking at Ancestry DNA. Ancestry.com took up so much of my time, y'all, because it was so interesting. I had to literally fast. I said, let me take a sabbatical from this website. In between that time is when you reached out to me, Kelli. And so, guys, y'all have to understand, she reached out to me. I did not even respond to her. It was a year and like a month by the time I even got back to you. So I wanted to interject because that probably helps when you say the cyber stalking took place. So who is this woman? Go ahead.
It's just, and I was like, and it was so funny because I think that our other siblings, because you hadn't responded,
Mhm.
interpreted as, oh, I think they were like, "Ooh, okay."
Thinking I wasn't interested. Like I was
I,
just like, I'm
yeah,
not even gonna respond to this chick. Like, you know.
so I think they were right. I think they were like, "Ooh,"
Uh-huh.
right, and it's just so funny. So, anyway, I like go online and I look you up. And the thing that was so funny was at the time I was in a graduate program getting my master's in leadership and education. And there you were with a master's degree in leadership and
In
education.
education. Hmm.
Right. And I was like, get out of here.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just so funny. And then, I meet a Damon and Candace, and Candace is like, oh, I want to go to school to be a nurse. I'm a nurse. You know what I mean? And just everything, even down to like the little nuances of, you know, that were like just nerds, like inquisitive nerds. Like
Yes.
it just that's it. We just
Yes.
sit around and like so, I saw so much of myself.
Mhm.
And it was funny. And then come to find out my youngest uncle, he is like he's more like a brother to me because we were kind of raised like brother and sister. He's only 2 years older than me.
Mhm.
um but he knew Damon, and he said, this makes perfect sense.
Oh, so he knew Damon
Yes,
and probably could probably see the resemblance more between your oldest daughter because she and Damon favor so much.
yes.
And it's so crazy because our
Hmm.
youngest, your
Uh-huh.
youngest daughter and my youngest daughter, they actually look like they could be siblings.
Yeah.
You look just like our oldest sister and our grandmother on our
Mhm.
dad's side. It's so you're right. You went from I look like no one to I look like everyone. Like you
Everyone.
literally can see, and our genes are very strong. Um, I think the thing for me, once I saw literally, I was looking for something for somebody else was having a family reunion and I went to research something. And so I went on my ancestry and saw your message. And
Hmm.
I looked at the date and I was like, oh my goodness, she reached out to me over a year ago and your number was there and I think I called you immediately, like as soon as, like it wasn't even a second. So mind you, in your brain and our other siblings brains, it's like, oh my goodness, Sherry wants nothing to do with me. But in
Yeah.
my brain I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk to her, because as soon as I found out, I picked up the phone. And I think that first phone call, we were probably on the phone like 2 hours. Like we just talked and talked and talked. And our connection ever since has been so strong. Like I tell God all the time, I am so grateful for my
Mhm.
sister. Where you grew up was in Baltimore. You literally were 10, 15 minutes away from Joy, my youngest, and you guys didn't even realize it. Like she was in your town going to school for nursing, going to school
Because
for nursing.
genetics is crazy. It's
Exactly.
crazy.
And we just hit it off and we just connected. And it's just been such a beautiful, not just a moment. We literally have a relationship like we have known each other our whole lives. And
Yeah.
I say all the time, I'm like, I I wish I would have had her sooner because she's so awesome. So awesome. I love my sister. We kind of talked about, childhood and things like that. Um, and so you ended up in school. You were in your graduate program,
Mhm.
almost finished, right? You were
Mhm.
coming down the tail end. So this was last year, Cal?
It was actually, I will never forget it. The reason why
It was
I will never forget it.
Thanksgiving.
Yep.
It
Because me
was
and you,
Thanksgiving.
that's what happened.
Yes.
Yes, I was, it was not my holiday to work. So I actually went to New Jersey to hang out with my family, had some dinner. Me and you were supposed to hang out the next day on Black
Right.
Friday. And I
And
just
this is
remember 24.
2024.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I remember saying, I said, just so tired. I'm so tired. And you said, just go home, get some rest. Go home and get
Mhm.
some rest, right? Don't worry about it. Go home and get some rest. And that day, I drove back to Baltimore, uh, laid down, took a
Mhm.
nap. And when I woke up, I had aphasia.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know what aphasia is, it's that inability to communicate effectively, as in like when sometimes you will see it when someone has a stroke. But I wasn't having a stroke.
I was having a moment
Yeah.
because you did not know our family's health history. And
Mhm.
strokes actually run in our family. Our biological father, which unfortunately you never even got to meet, but daddy had several.
Yeah.
Um, I, I know at least three. It might have been more than that. Candace and Damon can probably give you a better idea. And then our oldest sister, when she was 48, our oldest sister, Angie, she had a stroke when she was 48. So as soon as, we were talking, I'm like, Kelli, get checked for that. Like it runs in the family. And so that's initially what I thought.
Yeah, yeah, I knew it. Yeah, nurses are such bad patients anyway. But
Mm,
like I could diagnose myself with an MRI.
a whole nother talk show.
It, but no, and I sat around and gradually I am starting to lose my ability to communicate. So it was the fact that I'm thinking the number four, but the number seven is coming out of my mouth, or
Mm,
all in that whole process where I was at that point in my life was I was a class and a half from graduating with my master's degree. I was like teaching, I had students I was teaching at work. I was a preceptor. I was doing so much. I was out here, in my in my prime, right? Because you're thinking, oh, my kids are grown. I don't have to worry about them. You know what I mean? Like loosely speaking. I can go and I can travel. I can pick up and do whatever I want to do. So I went from I am getting ready to reach my goals, right? And living my best life to, oh my gosh, I do not know if I will ever be able to work again. Will I be able to take care of myself? It was crazy. And my so I went, to the hospital that I work at, and they kept me for 8 days. And they did not release me until they knew why I had this aphasia. And they finally came and said, this is MS, multiple
Right.
sclerosis.
Multiple sclerosis. Absolutely.
And I have an aggressive form, relapsing, remitting multiple sclerosis. So at that time, they saw that I had a large lesion on my brain, over the communication center of my brain. That is why I had lost the ability to talk. At the time, I had nursing students. My mother had to email my professors and the nursing school instructors to say hi, that I couldn't complete my classes. Right. And my friends and family were seeing me and calling me, and they were so scared because at the time they were not sure what the lesions were, right? When they first started off.
Remember that? Yes.
Yeah. So nobody
figure
knew,
it out.
right? They were like, "Oh my goodness, is this cancer? Is it a lesion? Whatever." So everyone was just scared, and I couldn't communicate, and it was just very scary. In that process where you go from I'm on top of the world,
right, fully self-sufficient in everything.
Yes, to, oh my goodness, I had to hand over everything because I could not even check my bank account because I couldn't put the numbers in. I had to give my mother and my daughter had to take all over the paying my bills and filling out applications. It was crazy. And sometimes I could speak, and sometimes I could write, or sometimes I would have to do work, both. I would start off writing, but then I would have to speak. It was it was crazy.
I remember, when I tell you, I remember because I was scared. Those 8 days trying to figure out what was happening because I couldn't communicate with you. I had to communicate with your oldest daughter, Kayla. And I love the fact that she kept me so informed. I tell her all the time, I'm like, oh, my niece, I love you so much because she had every day she would make sure, when I reached out, she responded within a short period of time. And she really kept me abreast of what was happening. But the not knowing was difficult. And I'm going to share, you and I never talked about this until very, very recently when I said to you, and in that moment, I didn't want to share. You had enough going on or whatever. But when I tell you the prayer I prayed to God, I said, Lord, listen, I just got my sister. Like we had just connected. We were building our relationship. I'm like, please don't let me lose her. Because we just found each other. And I carried that. Like that thing was so heavy because I just said, why? Like I questioned. God, I need some understanding. Why would you bring this amazing person into my life? We're building this relationship. We're connecting, our kids are connecting, and only to take her away from my life. Like it was a heavy moment for me. My faith has always been strong, and it still was, but I questioned because I did not understand. I didn't understand the timing.
Yeah.
But I went to war. I'll tell you that. I'm like, I remember,
And that is the one thing that MS has taught me. Well, it's taught me a few things, but one of the things that it taught me was when you spend your life in service to others, right? And trying to be the best person you can be, right? It comes back. It comes back to you because the amount of love and support that I received during that time, like I said, it just amazed me, right? And everybody kept saying, you spent so much time taking care of others and being there for others. And now it's your turn to just stand down,
Yes. Yes.
And
But you know what, Kelli, I think about also, because one of the things you said a few minutes ago was you were treated at the hospital where you work. And so what I love about God, the favor that he gave you, because when we talked afterwards, because you went through a long recovery period, like you had to get back to where you are right now with your speech, you were not even remotely close to this,
Nope.
And so that in and of itself is a miracle because we know where you were. But you said, when we had this conversation, you said, it takes them a very long time to even figure out what type. First of all, the fact that you had MS, but then the type that you had, usually takes a very long time. But because God allowed you to be in the place where you work, your coworkers would not rest. They did everything, every test they literally did everything that they could because one of them was laying in the hospital bed.
It was great. That is the story. Every time I went to a new specialist or saw a new provider, they were always amazed. They said, "You found out in 8 days." They usually say, and I've sat in on, I've gone to some MS meetings, like support groups and stuff like that. And that is usually what happens. People start off with symptoms, and they have those symptoms for like a year or a year and a half, whatever. But they don't get diagnosed sometimes for a little bit. But in 8 days, I knew. They could have just said, well, we don't know why she's not talking, so let's just go ahead and send her to speech therapy and see what happens. But they didn't. And my daughter said I should have been going in the dark. That's how much test that they had. She said, you should go in the dark.
At this point, right?
Wow. So, as a Black woman, right, I learned I did not have to wear the strong Black woman cape. I didn't have to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And sometimes we put ourselves on a where we have to be everybody's everything all the time because that is the expectation of us, right?
Right.
So you talk about dealing with, we're going to say, the trauma of having MS, right? When I think about all that I have accomplished, right, before this had started, okay? It was a humbling experience to, sometimes we don't realize that a part of humility is being able to accept help when you need it, right? So
Yes.
being humble sometimes means you have to stand down and accept what is given, right?
Right.
So I had to change my perspective. I had to put things in categories and understand what was important and what was, what I
Mhm.
need to set to the side and say, nobody's going to die today if I don't attend this meeting or if I don't, you know what I mean? I had to,
Absolutely.
I went from being like,
Absolutely.
yeah, trying to be everybody's everything all the time
Yeah.
to like, you're not built like that anymore and you need to accept it.
Mhm.
Um, and that has been the hardest thing is
Yeah.
adjusting to that.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Right. I get
yeah.
it. And you're right. It's that's one of the things we do put on ourselves in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot to carry, but at the end of the day, you said you're not built like that anymore. Truth be told, you were never built like that. When you were designed,
Yeah,
God didn't design us to carry that. His word says, lay aside weight,
mhm.
cast our cares on him. We're never built to carry that level. We do it, but in our own strength, there's only so much that we can do. You talked about humility.
Mhm.
Humility is a sign of strength.
Yeah,
A lot of people think, oh, humble, that's a weak, you're weak when you do. No, you're not.
right.
It's a sign of strength. Meekness is a sign of strength. These are things that we are endowed with because they're needed to
Right.
help us, sustain life, a healthy life, with
Yeah,
longevity for as long as we
right.
can. And so I'm grateful that you learned that lesson. Unfortunately, it took this incident for that to happen. But at the end of the day, everything that we go through in life, the purpose is to teach us what lessons do we learn from this. And so I'm able to hear you say, I learned this. I took this away from this experience. And Kelli, I'm going to say this to you through this entire process. I know you have had good days. I know you have had bad days. I know you have had horrible days. I know that there were times when the words would come, like you're like right now. And then there were times where you're like, I I can't think of what I like. You literally would have to say, I can't think of what I want to say. Like the word is there. My brain knows it's there. I can't grab it. I can't, you know. And
Right.
so as I watched you go through this, one thing I will say to you that was so inspirational to me was your positive attitude always remained. Even on your worst day, you weren't rude, you weren't nasty, you were always as upbeat and encouraging as you could be, and that was such an inspiration to me. Um, and
Yeah.
and so I needed to share that with you. Like
Mhm.
we never know who's watching us go through our low moments, and how we handle those low moments can actually be such a blessing and an encouragement to somebody. And I
And
needed to share that with you.
oh, I thank you because to be honest, through this whole experience, that's one of the things that my therapist talked to me about. She asked me, she said, you should be crying. And she said, there are certain things that elicit crying. And she said, I know you want to, but you're not. And like she was asking me basically like, um, she was questioning how I was carrying like some of this burden and this thought, like some of these things that were happening.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna honestly say I've only cried twice during this whole process, right? Because I was so frustrated, right? I was so frustrated about like not being able to communicate and all
Yes.
those things. So we talk about two different things, right? One, how I was raised, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, how I was raised. But when I say raised, I mean professionally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the family that I grew up with, my mother's family has always been very, uh, loving and supportive. They joke and play all the time, like, um, just welcoming people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the family that I was raised to believe were my family were quite the opposite. And the man who raised me um, believed that crying was a sign of weakness, you know,
Wow. Okay.
and if you cried, you were weak. Um, and I learned very early that I needed to demonstrate strength, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing when I talk about how I was raised professionally. We joke about this all the time. We talk about the generational differences, right? So you
Right.
have, right? So us Gen Xers, we were taught by baby boomers, and they were no joke.
Right.
They were no joke.
Right.
And we also had like some of the silent generation mixed in too, like teaching us. Whereas in the millennials and Gen Z, that's a whole different category, right? So, I've been in healthcare for 25 years, right? If you cried at work, you were considered a bad nurse. You were weak.
Mm.
It meant that you could not do your job. You couldn't handle it. If you in here crying, you can't handle this job. This ain't for you, right?
Oh, wow.
So we learned to take a lot of stuff. If a patient assaulted you, it was considered a part of your job. You did not report patient abuse. You did not say, "Oh, I need to press charges." They would
Right.
say, "That's, the patient's ill," or they're, whatever it is. That is a part of your job to
Mm.
get hit and
Right.
to be cussed out. And, so you learned to squash that down. And I even remember being, when I was new, I'm a labor and delivery nurse, and I remember when I was new into labor and delivery, and everybody has such a misconception of that field. They think we sit around and play with babies all day, and they do not realize how
Oh, no.
intense, right?
Yes, it is.
It is
Yes,
intense.
it
So
is.
um, I would remember walking around carrying like these really like intense moments and very scary moments all day at work. And then I would get in the car and just cry, you know,
Yeah, you had to let it out.
because
Had
I
to
had to,
release it.
right.
Yes.
And I remember saying, I remember crying to my mother. And at this point, I'm a grown woman. I had a child of my own. And I'm looking at my mother going, "Oh my God, I can't do this. I can't do this." Right.
That ugly
So
cry. Was it the ugly cry?
yes, it was. Yes, it was. That is the only being a new grad nurse was made me cry before all this other stuff did. Uh,
So you learned how to really compartmentalize your emotions through all of those experiences,
yeah, yeah, I
right?
did.
Well, th- has um this your exposure to MS changed that in you at all?
No. Well, it's only
No.
changed one thing. It's only changed one thing. And I'm going to say
Okay.
this. Because of the negative experiences that I had as a new nurse all
Hmm.
those years ago, I made a vow to myself that I would never let anybody experience the type of teaching
Hmm.
education that I experienced as a new grad. I would never, because that is not how you build someone up, right? And make them strong,
Right.
right? So I made that vow to myself. Okay. Um, and the only thing that MS did was gave me a different perception of we complain a lot in healthcare about people thinking that we are servants and waiters and wait staff, um, because what other profession do you work in where you are calculating drip rates and thinking about pathophysiology and thinking about how is this drug going to metabolize and half-life, and what does this lab mean on one hand, and the other hand, I'm changing your diaper
Right.
and I'm mopping the floor, getting the blood up. So
Right.
how many professions do you know?
Mm,
Or I'm talking you through an anxiety attack, right? So
right.
I'm your social worker. I'm I'm the nurse caring for your body. I'm also like the pharmacist, the doctor, the
The
and
cleaning
housekeeper, the
person.
dietitian.
Right.
You are the
Exactly.
same, right?
Exactly.
But the thing that MS taught me, right? It made me change my perspective. When I was in that hospital for 8 days,
Hmm.
having control over my food was the only thing that was my own. So, being able just you're not at home. I couldn't just get up, go to the kitchen and get me a cup of water. You know, I couldn't. Sometimes I'm like, can somebody bring me like some a washcloth or soap? What is going on? Do they sit around in their house all? So it was like that is one of the things it gave me insight on.
Mm,
And although I remember years ago, um, a nurse attorney told us when I was a new grad at Hopkins, she said, people will not remember that you saved their life. They will not remember that their heart didn't work and you put a new one in. Okay. And they're now able to walk around and live another day, right? They're going to remember that the food was terrible. The doctor was rude. You know what I mean? So what
mm,
she was trying to impart to us was people are not, they're not just thinking about, oh, you have saved my life or you have improved the quality of my life. They're also thinking about how you made them feel in that process.
right. Very true.
Yeah.
Very
So,
true.
right. So,
So that's a good takeaway.
yeah.
And not just that, that's in any profession, definitely, when you're serving, those professions where you are, it's more service, but that's just generally and in life, people remember how you make them feel.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask this question, because March is MS Awareness Month. And I heard you say, you've joined support groups and, you've become knowledgeable on other things. For those who may be watching because truth be told, I knew about MS. We actually had two cousins who passed away in their younger years who had multiple sclerosis,
Yeah.
from our father's side of the family.
Mhm.
And I did not know a lot about, you know,
Yeah.
um, is it is it a condition? It is what is it? What do you call it?
So, MS basically is your immune system turning against itself.
Okay.
So basically your immune system is looking at your brain and spinal cord as the enemy. So
Oh,
it is trying to
wow.
attack your brain and
Attack it.
spinal cord.
Right.
Yeah. So and the brain and spinal cord are so important for us to function, right? Um so
Brain, everything,
yeah, yeah, for everything.
you
So
know?
all right. And that is basically it in a nutshell.
Okay.
Um so I'm actually participating in a walk in April and very excited about it. My friends, of course,
Oh,
are in support
yes.
of my MS walk, but the MS Society has such wonderful resources.
Okay.
Um, you can actually go on and they will give you like a partner or somebody to help guide you through the process. There's all kinds of information about advanced directives or dealing with like work, how do you handle work, and all those kind of things. I even have the ability to share with uh, postpartum information for somebody who is pregnant and having and has MS. Um, and there is some controversy on some of the medications that we use to treat MS, meaning some people are scared of side effects, so they don't take advantage of those medications.
Mm.
Um, one of the things that they're called disease modifying treatments, or DMTs.
Okay.
I take one.
Mhm.
Those DMTs help to keep those lesions stable. They keep me from developing new lesions. Um,
Now, can they cure that? Is there a cure? There is none. Okay.
yeah. So the thing that people do not understand is, um, number one, it will keep new lesions from forming, but the
Okay.
damage that has been done.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So,
Yes. So that's
um,
irreversible.
yeah, that's the part. Um, and because it is attacking the MS, or trying to get to the root of this MS, it also depletes your immune system. And so on these DMTs, I am now immunocompromised because it attacks some of my immune system's cells, right? Um,
So that makes you more susceptible to infections and other colds and other things. So a lot of times what you're experiencing in your body is not actually the MS itself, but conditions that come as a result of your compromised immune system.
Well, I have not had that much. I haven't had that much issues with like immunosuppression, although I have been yelled at by my neurologist, and he was like, "Why are you still working on the floor as a nurse?" I said, "Sir, you want to pay my bills? Give me your paycheck." No, but honestly, a lot of it. So here's one of the big kickers, right? We do not talk about women's health, right? And when we talk about all the providers that I've seen, I have 7 doctors. I have 7. Please ask me how many of them addressed MS related to women's health. Not one. Not one. I kept saying, I feel really bad once a month for like a couple of days where I'm chronically fatigued. I can't get out of bed. I have what we call a cog fog, right? Where you are having a trouble forming senses,
Cognitively. Hmm.
right? Um, and all these other like things. Come to find out, thanks to the MS Society, there were articles and everything printed about it, and they had it. 85% of women who in menstruating age will have a flare up type symptoms around their menstrual cycle. So
Hmm.
what I was feeling was a part of the MS process. So it would feel like the MS was coming back. I learned through going to the MS sites and looking at different neurologists and talks that there is a connection between estrogen and MS, right? And how those
Hmm.
hormones work. So I just feel like it's another area where, women's health we have not addressed, um, especially when they look at perimenopause and how, that can affect the, you know,
Absolutely.
is
Absolutely.
it's
That
terrible.
that that in and of itself. Oh my goodness. Whether you have another underlying condition or not. Oh my goodness. Again, that's a story for another. When we think about MS, I know for me, outside of knowing, you know, it's a debilitating disease, I did not know much about it. I didn't even, when we talk, you're like, there's so many different forms. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Something that basic I didn't know. And so having you on here talking about it and sharing, especially because this is released during MS Awareness Month. I love the fact that people are learning something new. I'm learning something new. And so I want to backtrack as we prepare to close out this conversation. You talked about you were in school. Part of what you did was educate nurses.
Mm-hmm.
So you were a nurse and an educator. Uh, I'm thankful because through all of this, I can just see you educating about this,
Yeah.
not just from that research, scientific, medical standpoint, but from a personal encounter that you're living through,
Right.
and the impact that it can have on so many people. So, as we close out today, Kelli, I want to ask you, is there anything that you want to say, final words that you want to share that, will just either enlighten or encourage those watching who might be supporters of or family members of those dealing with MS or people who are dealing with MS themselves? Is there anything that you wanted to share as we prepare to close out?
So there are two things. So the first thing is, um, when you have MS, you have to give yourself grace, right? Um,
Yes.
there are there are times where you have to just stand down and you have to lean into that. You know what I mean? Um, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world because this particular day, you're going to have to take a rest day. You know, the sky's not going to fall, So give yourself grace, because I've learned to do that,
Mhm.
And when it comes to family members, coworkers, friends, and things like that, the biggest lesson I've learned, especially in the last couple of months, is people mistake the fact that you're looking at them and you're talking to them and that you're working, right? Um, that everything is okay. Everything is not okay. And I even had a provider say to me, um, they wanted to make sure I wasn't I wasn't a risk for seizure. So I saw this specialist for epilepsy, which I'm not.
Mhm.
Long story short, this woman said to me, "Oh, well, if there is a disease to have, well, it would be MS." She said, "That's not even a disability."
Oh,
Hi.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So because she was basing it on the fact that she specialized in epilepsy. So there's nothing they can do to prevent you from having seizures. All they can do is give you some anti-seizure medication versus MS with the DMTs. But I said, pause. The damage that has been done to my body, right? I said, I
Yes.
was in school. I was not able to finish.
Right.
I cannot work in the same capacity that I did. The amount of time and energy it takes my brain to cognitively function
Right.
is different. That and the way that your body has to compensate for the fact that you have these demyelinated cells down to I'm freezing 1 minute or I'm burning up the next minute. If I
Mhm.
get too hot, my vision goes blurry. I have difficulty speaking. Just because I'm looking at you and today I am able to take care of a patient or, go to the mall and shop and hang out with you one day or
Right.
go to the New Edition concert, which was
Listen,
amazing.
listen.
Just
Look,
because,
another thing that we have in common, because I am a concert person too, but But just because you can do that in that moment doesn't mean it's sustainable.
Right.
Right.
And that is the biggest thing. If you are supporting someone with MS, you have to allow for them to have those down times and be okay with it. And this is the last thing I'm going to say about it. I did not realize, right? I had most people walk around with MS undiagnosed for 6 to 7 years. That is what the studies say.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Is it
Most people
because
are
the
walking,
symptoms are onset so slowly that they don't
yeah,
realize?
or they're like piecemeal or whatever, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So we started to realize, like my daughter realized there was something wrong with me, but she could not put her finger on it, right?
Looking back in retrospect.
She could not
Okay.
put her finger on it. There was something wrong with me, but I kept saying, I'm just tired. I'm working too much because I'm working full time and I'm going to grad school and I'm trying to drag this last child through high school. Thankfully, she made it. But I walked around and with like, not realizing that I was coming apart.
Mm.
And I was struggling with things I had done for years, right? I was an ACLF certified.
Realizing
Yeah, I
that
was
this was the onset of it.
yeah,
Got
right.
it.
But
Okay.
that is the end. But that's the main thing. It's
Well,
just
thank
safe and
you.
support.
Thank you so much. I am elated to have been able to capture this moment, um, because we know how far you've come. God has brought you a long way from November 2024 till now.
Yeah.
He has brought you a long way. I remember we were in a conversation very recently, probably about a half hour in, and I think I stopped. I was like, "Oh my gosh, Kelli, you're talking so clear." Like it didn't dawn on me. It's like I'm having a whole coherent conversation with you. Wait a minute. And that's when you said to me, yes, my lesion has shrunk.
Yeah.
That big lesion that you had actually shrunk down. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I thank you. I'm just gonna say my church every year we do a miracle wall. We have we have a miracle season. We have these cards and we're able to write out what we're believing God for. And you were on there. You were on my miracle card. And so I think in that moment I realized I'm like, my sister is a miracle. Um, because I know where you were and everything that has happened up until this moment, I'm watching and I'm saying, God, it's only you. So I am so glad that you were here. I'm glad we were able to capture this moment. I am thankful for the information that you shared, both to those who are battling MS or surviving with MS, but also those who support people who are going through that, like the words of wisdom that you gave to us as well. So thank you so much for that. To my audience, if this blessed you in any way, let's simply ask that you share it with someone. If you know somebody can benefit from this particular talk show episode, please share it. I would love for you to like and subscribe, but ultimately, we want to get this information out to as many people as we can. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Surviving with She Rich. If this content helped you, hit like, subscribe, and share. And remember to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Dr. She Rich 4.